No, I think your English is much more better than mine. So, hello, comrades. Today I will speak with Konrad Rekas, who is like me, a Russian spy. We are together. We are living in emigration. I am from France. Konrad is from Scotland now. And what? Maybe I would like to firstly your comment to this situation that now President of the United States of America came to Poland. Firstly, he met with American soldiers. After he met with Ukrainian refugees, so it is very interesting that the American president came to Poland to speak with the American soldiers and Ukrainian refugees. Now there is some speeches to Polish people, but have you seen this voyage Biden in Poland? What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's very significant that American president came to Poland like to Puerto Rico, yeah, like just to meet with own brave GI Joes, yeah, make some photos that he's still young and brave as them, and of course active and of course still ready to fight with the Russian evil, yeah, and secondary. He just to try to figure out if any hidden information about his interest and his son's interest in the Nazi oligarchic Ukraine are hidden still. Yeah, like Zelensky promised him probably a couple months ago. And then, of course, he had some time because, well, that would be nice to meet with this strange, silly, funny guy who is Polish so-called president, and of course said a couple words to this naive nation. I believe that for Joe Biden, it's absolutely not interesting if this is Poland or Holland or anything like that, because, I wasn't surprised, of course, with anything he said, because whatever he said in his speech, that would be announced in Poland, historical, absolutely very important. And of course, we both know that it's absolutely enough to cite John Paul II to Polish people, and everybody is absolutely, in orgasmic style in after hearing that American president is so great Polish friend. Of course, it's nonsense. It's just a cosplay of world hegemon, who is absolutely terrified by situation on Ukraine, because I think that Poland is now one of the just few countries who still believe that American hegemony and American alliance, so-called, is important, that American world order can prevail for next couple years. Of course, for everyone else is that American hegemony is over.
Did you heard the speech of Joe Biden in Poland?
I've written that it's absolutely nothing. Just couple forms, yeah, nothing important. But just repeating the same sentences we could hear yesterday about how big. And strong and absolutely unchangeable is NATO unity. When someone ensured us in such a style, with such an emphasis, we can be sure that something is in line. Yes, that if President Biden for the third time repeat that NATO is united, that is, we can be sure that it's not united, that it must be divided as any time before. Anything else is just repeating the question: how President Putin lose this war? Well, I can see day by day that Russian troops are just another 10, 15, 20 kilometers farther in the territory of Ukraine, and not American soldiers and not GI Joes and not American missiles over the Russian sky and Russian land. So I only trust my eyes. I know who is winning this war, not America for sure.
I started to listening this speech of Biden, and first 2 minutes are very funny for me. Do you want that we are listening together?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Wait. Mm, because it is so how to say it's he makes it he speak about Pope and also Lech Wałęsa, and I don't know for speaking today about Wałęsa in Poland, it is something ridiculous that he didn't knew that the Polish government hate Wałęsa now, and but he didn't updated his information. Um, okay, so sorry, comrades, for this, but it is very funny.
I believe.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. Mr. President, they tell me you're over there somewhere. There you are. Thank you, Mr. President. Be not afraid.
Be not afraid.
These are the first words, the first public address of the first Polish Pope at this election in October 1978. They were the words that would come to define Pope John Paul II. Words that would change the world. John Paul brought the message here to Warsaw in his first trip back home as Pope in June of 1979. It was a message about the power of faith, the power of resilience, the power of the people. In the face of a cruel and brutal system of government, it was a message that helped end the Soviet repression in the Central Land and Eastern Europe 30 years ago. It was a message that will overcome the cruelty and brutality of this unjust war. When Pope John Paul brought that message in 1979, the Soviet Union ruled with an iron fist behind an iron curtain. Then a year later, the Solidarity movement took hold in Poland. While I know he couldn't be here tonight, we're all grateful in America and around the world for Lech Wałęsa.
Okay, I think that it's okay. So my impression when I am listening these words, "don't afraid," is that he wants to present himself like a second pope who came to Poland and say to Polish nation, "Don't be afraid. Go to fight with we need you to fight against Russia." And it is. But what do you think about it?
Yeah, well, it's on the one side, it's quite logical, yeah, that American presidents cites American agent of influence, yeah, because we have to understand that everywhere outside Poland, John Paul II is treated exactly as American agent of influence, yeah, and his well-known cooperation with Reagan, with Thatcher, with CIA directly in actions against first Eastern Bloc, then apart from the others against Yugoslavia and other countries. John Paul II in his policy, in his politics, was always loyal ally of American imperialism, and that's of course true. So, well, from that point of view, President Biden is quite consistent in sitting old and proven American agent. But of course, and mentioning about Lech Wałęsa is also absolutely quite funny in the present Polish situation, but it's not the first time. Yeah, we have to remember that for example, Trump mentioning communist Jewish partisans, in Poland, in reality of IPN and the Polish political historical politics, with all this aggression against communists, against communist resistance, against with just a bit hidden anti-Semitism when it's connected and related with anti-communism. And President Trump just, the best friend of Poland, just mentioning Polish Jewish communist partisan. That was shock. That was shock at that time. So Lech Walesa, comparing to that, it's just that's the small problem. But of course, well, Americans know exactly that. First of all, they do not have to do any background, any preparation for such speeches, such events in Poland. Poland would be, like always, absolutely happy and enjoy anything you can hear. And of course, President Biden in Poland is speaking not only to Polish people, but also for Eastern Europeans altogether, and to Europeans everywhere. And of course, mentioned two Polish people, which from the modern history, which are best suited to the another action, to mobilizing people in especially Central Europe against Russia. So this why Walesa and John Paul II is absolutely obvious. So, dear Polish people, again go to first line and fight for American imperialism, and we will mention you again in 40 years after your spectacular death, of course. Well, yeah. So my impressions are absolutely similar to yours. This don't afraid and die. That's exactly what President Biden would like to say to Polish people.
I think that when he mentioned Lech Wałęsa, the Western countries in 1980 and 1981, they very often presented in the Western media Lech Wałęsa like a hero, all this stuff, the Peace Nobel for Wałęsa. I think that it is very similar to what now we see about Zelensky. That Zelensky is the same guy that now everybody, if he wants to make a political career in the world, he have to speak with Zelensky, shake hands with Zelensky, make photo with Zelensky. He's like, do you think that if Zelensky will have a long life like Wałęsa, after 30 years, what do they think? What will the Ukrainian society think about them? Because for the people who don't know Polish society, I have to say that now everybody are treating the Lech Wałęsa like idiot, like clown. Nobody treat him serious. Nobody. Every time when he open his mouth, he says something very, very stupid. He is very narcissistic person. He's I don't know. He's disgusting, and it is not. Of course, the ruling party hate him, but also the opposition. Before they trying to push him and make him his I don't know, his symbol, iconic. No, they don't want, because he is so great, so much idiot. Do you think that the future of Zelensky will be the same?
Well, yeah, that's very good notice, because, yes, I have quite similar expression that Zelensky is like Walesa of our times. Well, and it's even more funny that it was in original story. That's normal. It's the war always for the Westerners is treated as a Hollywood production. Yeah, so there must be the villain number one. Yeah, so now we have Putin in this role, and of course there must be some kind of positive hero. Yeah, always in white hat. Yeah, like in westerns, and Zelensky. was hired for this role. Well, the point is that he's even better than prepared than Walesa, because he is an actor and quite funny comedian. So if, for example, Hollywood would try to make a movie about this heroic fight for democracy and Western values in Ukraine, so Zelensky would play himself. That would be much easier than to hire Robert De Niro to play like Walesa, like it was planned 30 years ago. But well, the problem with the young Lech Walesa and old Lech Walesa is that actor always feels lost without scenario. Yeah, actors never use own words. Yeah, and when Walesa was left by his promoters, by his sponsors, and tried to use own language, so everybody then could see he's nothing less. Yeah, and Zelensky still has some copywriters, so he's still kept online of popularity. But of course, for everyone knowing situation in Ukraine, not only from it so-called invasion, but who was interested in that situation in previous couple years, know exactly when Zelensky hasn't been a real president, hasn't been a real man in power in Ukraine. 23rd of February, it's absolutely nonsense to say that okay, but on 24th of February he started to be leader of the defense. It's a nuisance. That's a puppet. That's a man hired to be on the front because Ukrainian oligarchs and Nazi commanders who lead this country in real, this time didn't want to be seen. Yeah, so they choose. They say, oh, this funny guy, yeah, that would be good move in election. People likes him. Let's make him, some TV series that he presents that he is honest and close to the people. And that would be easy to that would be our campaigning with relatively not big money to spend, and well, that would be easier for us to do whatever we want in the rest of the country, the rest of the country wealth, for sure. And he's still in his play, but from the first comedy movie, he transferred to the political fiction movie, and then it's the war movie. So I believe that for him it's only porno and soap opera left, because and I believe that it's still behind him, because when I see this liberal media in the West with this night gowns with his photo, all these articles from in the women's press. Would you like to sleep with Zelensky? Would you like to have a child with Zelensky? That it's really happening. It's really happening. So it's real war. People are dying, and the liberal world made with this another celebrity soap opera. That's disgusting. That's amongst us. That's straight disgusting.
Okay, so I would like to, because the subject of our conversation is the countries of the global south and the sanction toward Russia. So, firstly, what do you think about this photo? I don't know if you are okay. Could you comment?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to think that it's not only the war with Russia, against Russia. First of all, it's the war against possible Russian-China cooperation. Yeah? So that's the most important thing. And that's the war against Belt and Road Initiative. So for China, this situation is very sensitive, because we have to understand that China are very strongly import related country. Yeah? They based on the import, especially about on energy resources. So any relationships, not only with Russia, but also for any other energy producers in the world, are absolutely crucial for China's economy. And well, I think that it would be much better and much more, useful, especially for Polish analytics or Polish also society, to watch not another heroic film from Mariupol or something like that, but to watch exactly the flows of money, the flows of energy, and the flows of money, the flows and chains of supply all over the world, because it's the new geo-economical map of the world. That's the absolutely basic for the understanding next couple decades. And the fact that China could, be still very flexible and could again discuss not only with typical allies like Pakistan and Iran, but also with the former, more skeptical countries like Saudi Arabia, like Arabian Emirates, and so on. That prove that it's the new leader, the new world leader in the world where American hegemony is over. That's very important, also for Poles, but also for everyone who counted for end of American hegemony for decades.
So for the people who don't know why I make this photo, is this because it's a very important information that now Saudi Arabia will buy oil and oil to China, not paying with in dollar, but with the Chinese yuan, and it will be. I really don't understand why all the time every country, when they make trade, why all the time China and Saudi Arabia, they are trading with dollar. I don't understand it why all the time, but it is the sign that maybe it will be finished. That now this dollar domination, if the Saudi Arabia, which is traditionally the most important ally of the United States in this region, if Saudi Arabia now in this time betrayed the United States, I think that it is very, very important that we face now something new is starting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the very important element of this conflict, that we are facing acceleration of processes which have been expected, for years, but in the longer perspective, for sure. In theory, a lot of economists suggest that the BRICS economies, that especially Russia and China could or should even transfer to the new way of exchange, to attempt to form new multi-currency basket of international trade, to replace dollar with some kind of new standard of yuan, ruble, rupia, real, and a couple maybe more currencies, and that would be very important, because that would be some of us, some older of us, for sure, remember that in the 70s or even in the 80s, if the most serious competitor for American economy, that was Japan. Japan was treated as a future main economy in the world. If we remember this futuristic or science fiction American films, it was always Japanese companies, who are much stronger so are leaders in capitalism, and buy all Americans' wealth and govern that. But what happens next? What happened next? Next it was Plaza Accord. So big, strong counteroffensive of American economy. New agreement with Japan, German, and France, Britain economy. Devaluation of dollar, and pushing Japanese economy in the troubles, which for the truth never ended since half of the 80s. So this element of underbalance between economies using dollar was always the additional and superpower in the hands of the Federal Reserve and the American government. And China absolutely knew this experience, so they wanted to prevent it with one simple method. They used the surplus in a trade exchange to keep very hard and very strong also surplus of the American public debt, American obligations. So for both sides, they were in the some kind of check play and play of chicken. Yeah, and no one could attack economically another economy without destroying his own one. So that was the point. So no one was in a hurry to replacing dollar, but now war and this American treat that they can cut off all the connections with Russian economy and of all Russian allies all over the world, just to make it absolutely impossible to make strong and big exchange of any goods with these countries. That pushed Russia to use the Chinese systems and to agree for any Chinese proposals of financial agreements. We had to, for example, understand that when Western banks announced with such a triumph in voices that SWIFT would be blocked for Russians, and that there would be no international transactions in SWIFT system between banks, then Russia just choose to use the Chinese system, which is strongly related to yuan, and that makes next steps very much easier for them. I believe that in next couple or several months we can see that more than half of the world, so the biggest oil and gas world producer, Russia, the bigger oil and gas consumer, China, the biggest world growing in the industry, China, the biggest also, what is funny, the biggest also world renewables energy producers, China, will transfer from dollar to the new basket of currencies, and that would be second big hit in American hegemony. First was political. Now America said, okay, stop, Russia cannot attack Ukraine. Okay, and what? Nothing happened. And now China and Russia can announce, okay, we don't use dollar anymore, and exactly nothing will happen.
Okay, so now I would like to ask you some difficult question, because you define yourself like a Polish patriot or Polish nationalist, yes? And the question is, how in today or in the last month, I think that I am the situation in the Polish society. I am disgust of this. I don't know. I always thinking that here where I am living, it is temporary. That yes, I will try to economize some money, and maybe later I will come back to Poland, because I thought that the economical situation in Poland will be changing, and I will come back. But in the last weeks, when I see all this hysteria in the Polish media, in the Polish parliament, in the Polish society, but it is not only the elites, it is the people in the streets who are I don't know. What do you what do you thinking about this nation, Polish nation, which now in the world is one of the stupid nation, in my opinion?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's not, the only good news for Polish people is that, well, if we would like to find someone who is even easier to be dumped, that would be Ukrainians. So because they were pushed to war, that because of the smile of such a disgusting guy like Boris Johnson. So they are even in especially now they are in a worse situation than we, but we are just stepped behind. So we are next. Good silver medal, yeah, with some perspectives for gold one as well. Exactly. Well, yeah, about my position, I think that it was more than 20 or maybe 25 years ago. Former Polish Prime Minister Mieczysław Rakowski, Polish communist and social democratic, later politician, asked me the same question. What's your views? Who are you? Who are you, Mr. Rekas? Yeah? Who are you, Konrad? And I said, well, I am the man of common sense. That's the point. So you can think about me as a leftist, as a rightist. I'm not offended by any of these categorizations, but I try to be a man of common sense, and it's really hard to be in such a position in Poland, because yeah, I agree, of course. Well, the rise of this propaganda, the rise of this hysteria, present hysteria about Ukrainian war in Poland was surprising, even for me. I strongly believe that I couldn't be surprised more with anything, which could happen in Polish politics. But I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised. A lot of people who were, of course, more or less related to the mainstream, to mass media. Just a couple of weeks ago, we're absolutely able to write something, absolutely sensible about situation of Ukraine. Understand the position. Understand how dangerous situation were that time, and was that time, and how many tweets also for Poland they were that were, but even these people, after a couple minutes, they started to make all this circus with flags, with banners, with this blue and yellow stripes and so on, and try to unfriend anyone who could be accused on being Russian spy. Well, atmosphere of absolutely mental terror in Poland, with absolutely no reasons. Well, let me be honest. Well, I was accused for a lot of things for last 20 years or even more. I was called communist, fascist, Russian spy, Ukrainian spy, also Iranian spy. Absolutely, any accusation who could only invent was printed or written against me. So it's for me, it's absolutely nothing more than another day of my activity. I always written the same. I always publishing the same. In my opinion, it's hard to find anyone who is more friendly for Ukrainian people, for example, because I always wish Ukrainian people all the best. Freedom from Nazism, freedom from oligarchy, freedom from any influence, especially Western influence. So who wish Ukrainians the best? Me or these people who pushed Ukraine to war? So I'm the pro-Ukrainian politics. We are the pro-Ukrainian politics when we support liberation of Ukraine from Nazism and oligarchy, and not Joe Biden, no Andrzej Duda, and not these other clowns in Poland. So that's the point.
Okay, so welcome, Comrade Bruno here. And Bruno, you also support the Ukrainian population in this fight against banderism and Nazism in Ukraine.
So yes, of course, it's obvious that we have in fact, we have a theater in Ukraine, because we have propaganda, we have a lot of slogans, but basically, if we look at how the so-called Ukrainian state functions, because I think it's not even a state, it's a something like a union of different oligarchs who are fighting each other normally, but in fact, it's not a real state. It's a puppet state, but it's not even an administration. It's a complete anarchy. And inside that, you have, of course, all those armed groups, fascist groups, and so on, who are very dangerous for mostly for Ukrainian people, as we can see it in Mariupol, where they're using people to survive one week more, because anyway they will be defeated. But before being defeated, they want to go to the grave with the more people they can have. It looks like at the end of Hitler Germany, when the German army and the SS were killing Germans because they didn't want to fight on their side. And in Mariupol, why are they fighting? I mean, it's obvious they have lost, but they do it because you have bunch of fanatics and you have oligarchs who made a lot of money plundering Ukraine for 30 years. That's the reality in Ukraine. There is nothing to do with democracy and independence, and I don't know other slogan they are using. The American will fight to the last Ukrainian. That's the aim of the American, and I hope that a lot of Ukrainian will be conscious of that. The earlier will be the best.
Okay, so I would like to. Here is the photo of the Israeli Prime Minister and Vladimir Putin, and how you comment this situation that Israel, which is one of the most important allies in the East, how to say, Far East? No, not Far East.
Middle East.
Middle East. In the Middle East, in the Middle East, that Israel have independent independent diplomacy than United States, and try to make everything to finish this war. They speak with Putin, they speak with Zelensky. What do you think about the politics of Israel?
A lot of oligarchs in Russia and in Ukraine are both have two citizenship. They have Ukrainian and Israeli citizenship. They have Russian and Ukrainian citizenship. So it's difficult for them to take side, because if they take side, they will lose influence in one of the two states. But actually, in fact, what is quite astonishing, because Israel wanted to be the intermediary between Russia and Ukraine, but apparently Turkey took this initiative in a much more active way, and that's quite a surprise that Erdogan managed to bypass, I would say, the Israeli prime minister.
Yeah, well, another question is that we have to remember that that United States, which are dependent from the Israel, not opposite, not exactly opposite, and I have to emphasize that it's not, of course, not a rightist or not a far right position, but the position of the leftists with Noam Chomsky online. And other leftist American politics who always repeated that would be much easier to prevail American imperialism if it wasn't American imperialism ruled by Zionists. Yeah, that would be the interest of the capitalists in Israel. That was the main problem of American policy, not only in the Middle East. Of course, Russia has very clever, and I believe that very sensible politics on the Middle East. Of course, Russia is on side of her Middle East Arabian and Islamic friends and allies, but in the same time, I never ever let nobody forget that was Russia, this country which stopped Holocaust, which break Nazi politics against Jewish people. President Putin always repeats that that's the Red Army which liberated Auschwitz Nazi death camp, and that's the absolutely fundamental question also for main Israeli ideology, because it's the establishing myth of the society. So it has to be honored also by Israeli politicians. And let's of course remember that it's the really big influence of Jewish society coming from Russia, from Russia in Israel. They are voters, and they even with any critics against present Russian politics in any aspect, they never accept any strongly anti-Russian politics in Tel Aviv. Yeah.
Okay, so now I would like to ask you, both of you, about the situation of the Russian economics, because the last weeks, all the time in the Western media, they informed that the Russian economy is collapsed, it's bankrupt, it will finish, and there was an information that now the ruble, that after the decision of the President Putin, if you want to buy the Russian resources, you need to pay in ruble, and the Russian currency is starting to be growing and growing. It was from the level 130 for the dollar, it's come to 90 ruble for the dollar. So we see that the ruble became starting to become a stronger currency. Similar situation is with the stock market in Moscow, that they announced that everything will be collapsed, and it's not. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think that is the answer why this conflict appears so late. Yeah, Russia had to prepare for such a conflict, not only with Ukraine but also with West. It has taken 8 years to prepare for any kind of more autarkian economy in Russia. They had to be stronger, increase own production, increase own food production, find new supply chains, finds new financial flows, to strengthen relationships with especially Asian partners. That has taken time. That's true. And other things is that, well, the time for conflict was absolutely high, because, well, we all know European strategy, energy transition strategy. It was so strongly based on Russian gas for the next 8 or even 13 years, especially, of course, position of Energiewende, the German Energiewende within this transition, that it was an absolutely perfect moment to use also this element as a strategical weapon in the hands of Russian politics, because, well, after 10 years or after 15 years, that would be a completely different situation, and the strategy of transition is focused on breaking the energy chains between Europe and Russia, and of course to make Europe dependent of American energy sector, which is not exactly and non in 100% possible, what we know exactly after this 10 points plan of how to turn out from Russian energy was published. From this plan, we know exactly that next winter we have to cut energy demand in Europe at about 15%. That is, I believe that is very optimistic forecast, of course, because it's absolutely impossible to have only 15% of households demand reduced and only 5 to 10% industry demand reduced on energy, because as we know exactly from the same document, from the same forecast, American and Qatarian LNG, liquid gas, could replace only about 70% of Russian supply on the European market, and that means that next winter would be very cold and very dark. And when we now discuss about Russian economy collapse, so I would start to be afraid of European economic collapse, because it's much more possible and much more predictable than the Russian one.
Yes, Russia is much more self-reliant than Europe. I mean, Europe doesn't produce anything except arms, in fact. Russia has wheat, has aluminium, has gold, has uranium, has titanium, has wood, gas, of course, and oil. So you know, Russia has a much better situation. But what makes me laugh to a certain extent is the fact that when we are talking about the collapsing of Russian economy, we never talk about what is the situation of the Ukrainian economy. And I'm not talking about Ukrainian economy from the war, but before the war. The Ukrainian currency fell completely. All foreign investment were taken out of the country before the war. So now the situation is much more tragic. And we have to ask how the Western country will support Ukrainian economy, which is completely collapsed. After all, it's still a big country with more or less 40 million inhabitants. I don't see the European Union able to make this country, have the minimum in a war situation, the minimum so people will be fed in Ukraine. So, objectively, the only chance for Ukrainians to have something like a more or less balanced economy is to reconcile with Russia. They don't have any other solution. All what the media are telling us now, it's just as if the economy didn't exist. But the law of economy are much more important than all other laws. So of course the United States are happy with this situation, but European are in a complete mess because they will have to pay for gas much higher prices. They will have less gas, and they will have to pay for what is existing in Ukraine. If there is no peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia in the next weeks, who will support the Ukrainian economy? We have to think about that. And all the refugees we have especially in Poland. If you look at the military situation, people do not need to leave Ukraine now because cities are not bombed. I mean, when they tell that in Kiev was bombed, they just declared after all that about 50 buildings were destroyed in all Kiev. It means nothing. So people are leaving Ukraine because the economical situation is terrible, and they think that it's the occasion to go west because they will be, accepted in the West for the moment. But basically, the refugees are coming are economical refugees. They are not. I mean, the cities of Lviv, Rivne, and so on. They were not destroyed. I mean, why people leave those cities? They leave those cities because they see that their state is collapsing, their economy is collapsing, and they think that, of course, it will be better if they're in Krakow and not in Lviv for the moment. So we have to think rationally about that. Ukrainian economy is collapsing, and it will cost a lot for Europeans to maintain Ukrainian economy, not taking into account the fact that European economy is beginning to collapse also.
Bruno, could you say something about situation in France, about the protests of the farmers, protests of the fishermen, and because this?
We have now a very big inflation in France. I heard that in Poland it's still worse, but anyway, in France we have a terrible inflation. So we have a lot of protests, and apparently, normally we should have even the 30th of March, a national day of protest organized by unions, by different unions, trade unions, because the French economy is in a very bad situation, and in fact, the French economy is the French standard of living now is worse than it was at the beginning of the Yellow Vest movement. So the reason that pushed people to take the street 2 or 3 years ago are much more important now, and that's also why the political leadership is panicking, but they want to control the situation up to the elections, because we have election in France. But anyway, we have a situation which is quite untypical, because normally during the electoral campaign there are not so much strikes and manifestation and so on, but this year we have quite a lot of people taking streets or striking, which means that people are aware that they have to mobilize, and that they have no hope toward the political class. So in this situation, I think that after the election, we will have a very, very hard time. And what Konrad told about the future winter, I mean, it's coming, and people are more and more aware that it's coming, and that their situation will not improve, that their situation will be worse and worse. So now they are striking and taking street. I guess that in a couple of months it will be much more massive. But of course, let's see. But I think that the situation is going to be very difficult, and people are already very angry. So
there is a question from chat. How is the Nazification in Ukraine progressing?
For the moment, there is nothing, because on the Ukrainian side there is no chance. But I'm not sure of one thing, because when we observe the situation on the front line, not what they are telling us on the medias, but if you look at very specialist analysts of the front, in fact, the war is going on only in Donbass. The rest of the front is quite calm. And sometimes I do have the impression that the Ukrainian officers, the Ukrainian army leadership is pushing the fascists in the forefront in Kharkov or in Mariupol. But in fact, I'm not. I think that maybe the more rationally thinking Ukrainian higher officers are tending to push these fascists in front, so they will be destroyed, and then it will be easier to make compromise with Russia. But of course, it's an hypothesis. But looking at the fact that more or less 80% of the front is not is calm, is quiet. And we have the impression that the Russian and the Ukrainian regular army are not really fighting in 80% of the front. In fact, it's only Donbass and a little bit in the Kherson region where you have fights. But north from Donbass up to the Belarusian border, there are no fights, in fact. There are fights in the medias. There are hysteria in the medias. But if you look on the ground, situation is quiet.
Yeah, well, what we can see that was absolutely obvious. That would be, just the very restricted area of fight, because what we see now, it's just the absolutely obvious proof that Ukraine was prepared to attack Donbass.
Yeah, that's right.
The Ukrainian army is in position to offensive. Yeah, that's why of course the defense was so hard for them, because when we were attacked by Russians, because they prepared to offensive. So I always repeat that for President Putin, this decision, for example, for sure very hard, because this is not the man of decision. Yeah, this is whatever he's presented in the Western, especially Polish media. This is not the strong leader always knows exactly what to do. If it's only possible to not to do anything, he would prefer that option. That's typical for him. That's true. But in this specific situation, and it's for me very surprising, as well as for anyone else, I believe, that President Putin corrected the mistakes of so great leader like Joseph Stalin, because Joseph Stalin waited for attack from Hitler to defend Soviet Union, and of course won this war for all of us. But President Putin was, well, it's good to learn from more clever. Yeah, so he learned that lesson from General Stalin, and he attacked first. So I have no problem with that the Russians shot first. Han Solo also shot first, as we remember from Star Wars, of course, original Star Wars, and still was a hero. Yeah, so President Putin,
especially that the first shot was in 2014. We have to remember that, because the war we are experiencing now is just the continuation of the war that began already 8 years ago.
Yeah, and presents rather few victims of this war. Of course, every victim is terrible, but the few victims is still not comparable with all these several thousands people who died and were murdered and killed by Nazis in Donbass. I was in Donbass several times. I was in Odessa in May 2014. Couple days, I smelled that smell of people's fired and murdered in the house of trade unions in Odessa. I saw in Donbass mass graves of Donbass people, children and women, killed with the shots on the back of the head by Azov and Donbass battalions, Nazi battalions. So no one can discuss with me that that Nazis, but the different Nazis. No, Nazis mean Nazis. Nazis is genocide and anti-humanity of all the times, and is exactly what exists on Ukraine, on present Ukraine. They are the same Nazis like made Einsatzgruppen and Einsatzbatalionen in the Second World War, and killed massively Polish, Russian, Ukrainians, Jews, Belarusians, and others on the same places. So no one can discuss with that with me, because I saw that with my eyes. The Nazification is in Mariupol. The Nazification is in Mariupol, And just when it started 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, with one interview, I said, let's look at Mariupol. I can absolutely be sure, and I can assure you, that would be some kind of, media human tragedy. That would be some kind of, Russian aggression with all the limits, outside all the limits. That would be something invented there just to help these Nazis to evacuate from Mariupol, and that's exactly what we observe now. Mariupol is now two parts of Mariupol, because that's Donbass militia and Chechens volunteers exactly in Mariupol, and they are hunting for Nazis. They are hunting for Azov battalion bandits, and I believe in week or two that first step to denazification of Ukraine will be done, and will be no more Nazis, at least in Mariupol, no more Nazis in Donbass, and after that we will see the rest of Ukraine. But I'm afraid that on that time these Nazi leaders will be in Warsaw.
That's possible, but anyway, it is very interesting to compare the narrative we have now about Mariupol, which is exactly the same narrative we had in Aleppo during the Syrian war, and we see how the official propaganda machine is functioning at every war the same way, and when you observed one war, then you understand that it's the same scenario. And people who are not aware, they discover the truth step by step. But when you are aware what happened in Libya, what happened in Iraq, what happened in Syria, how the narratives of chemical weapons, of etc., was used, then you understand that the Ukrainian war is organized, I would say, along the same scenarios, and then you understand that we have tear for the poor people in Mariupol and so on, but it's just fake, because in fact the terror is coming from the Nazis. Like in Aleppo, the terror was not coming from the state army; it was coming from the jihadi and so on, who were terrorizing and using human shield, and of course. It's exactly the same narrative. It is very important to show the continuity of the propaganda apparatus.
I would like to recommend some YouTube channel. It's Donbass Insider, made by the French journalist living in Donbass. In this kindergarten, every children go out. It was changed, this kindergarten, to the place of Azov. It was fortress of Azov, and when the Russian bombard this kindergarten, they bombard only the Nazi battalion of Azov, not children. But this fake it was spreading in all over the world. So if you try to search some information against this fake, watch this Donbass Insider. It is Russian with French subtitles.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, she's a very good journalist, because she's one of the few who wants to go where things happened. Because most often the journalists we have, they are in Kiev in their hotel. They go down to the street and they show as if they were on the front line, but they are not on the front line. They don't know what happens. They would be in their redaction. It would be the same. It's exactly there is something I always repeat concerning Donbass. All these journalists that are going to Kiev to Odessa they had something to do much more. If they would be honest, they would have in the redaction room, they would have a look at the OSCE daily report of the violation of ceasefire from 2015 up to now. And you have 700 observers, including observers from NATO countries. And it's very clear that most of the violations came always from the Ukrainian side, and that a lot of these violations were not fighting against military. They were using bombing civil buildings like hospitals, like schools, and so on. And you have that from 2015 everyday report up to now. But you don't find journalists that go to the internet website of the OSCE, and it would be much more positive and much more true if they wouldn't go to Kiev and talk from Kiev, because it would be much more authentic if they look at this daily report of the OSCE. But of course they don't do that, which is showing that they do propaganda. They don't want the truth. They just want propaganda, and they are working for propaganda.
There are the question from the chat. What are the chances that conflict in Ukraine will turn into guerrilla Nazi insurgency that will last for years, just like Syria, Afghanistan, but instead of Nazis, there were ISIS fighters? Somebody want to...
That's an important question. Well, first, one additional sentence to what Bruno said. The most arrogant example of such a propaganda was a couple days ago. You remember, after Ukrainian attack on Donetsk, where they attacked the civilians there on the street, and after that, Ukrainian side published these pictures as pictures from Kiev. Own victim as a poor Ukrainians killed by Russians. That was absolutely the higher top of hypocrisy I ever seen. I must say,
unimaginable.
And about guerrilla. Well, I believe that for some of the, if I understand the question well, I hope. I believe that one of the war targets for the Westerners is just to make this conflict continue forever. Because the main question, when this conflict can be over, the conflict will be over when Washington accepts that and let Kiev to surrender, because the problem is, and the second solution is that oligarchs which really rules Ukraine start to think and said, okay, our businesses are in trouble, so let's talk seriously with Russians. And that would be two possibilities. When the influence of the West is higher than then this war will continue forever. When Ukrainian oligarchs' interests prevail, then the war will be over with some guarantees for them. That they kept part of the wealth and some kind of compromise would be, especially on the part of Ukraine. But of course, even then, for the West, that would be one more solution, which is very dangerous for everyone, and especially for Poles. That would be that western part of Ukraine will be kept as a kind of Nazi Reich, Nazi banderist Reich. And what is absolutely unbelievable paradox, that would be Nazi banderist Reich under formal cover of Polish NATO alliance. So Poland would be closest ally to the Nazi country. That would be the hardest and the saddest day in my life. I have to confess, if something happens like that. And that would be proof for the Westerners that let's see. Public opinion. Let's see these brave Ukrainian Nazis. They still fight with bad Russians, and that would be something like that. Of course, if Russian army and Ukrainian society will not let to establish such a puppet Nazi Reich in the Western Ukraine, then there will be, of course, other possibilities. That would be, some kind of guerrilla in the Carpathia mountains. Yeah, that would be, some bunkers in within Hutulian woods. Yeah, that would be, and at last that would be, villa in Warsaw, when it would be, government in exile. Maybe not with Zelensky, or maybe with any other actor, maybe not so funny like him, but so, some commandant with treason and red-black Nazi flag on the jacket, but someone like that. That would be that would be this Ukraine which fights, with Russia. Because for the West, that the most important thing is that this war should continue, should distract Russia from any other directions, and should make costs for Russian economy, and for, of course, military industry, Western complex, make profits. That's the second very important target and goal of this conflict.
And how do you think it will be? What will be the consequence for the Polish society, Polish economy? Because we said something about the European Union, but the most engaged country in this conflict is Poland. Already, I think, 2 million refugees in Poland. Do you think that in the next election in Polish parliament there will be a party which represented this Ukrainian population? What do you think about the future of the Poland?
Anyone has more sad question? Because it's very sad question. Yeah, first of all, Polish economy. What economy? What economy? There's no Polish economy at all. Yeah, that's a small part of European economy, and especially German one, because Poland is just a subcontractor for German industry, and whatever sometimes is whatever more positive happens to the Polish economy is only because of the German politics, which is amongst us very controversial, because it's still austerity politics. So we have so it's politics in Germany and austerity in Poland. So that's the way how ordo liberals made this economical politics in our part of Europe. For Poland, it's a bigger disaster that we could expect it, because after 2 years of COVID politics, it was absolutely destroying any aspect of the social life, especially in Poland, and the economical life in Poland. And now we had some strange experiments. Michał asked who sponsors, who could help Ukrainian economy. Well, who? National Bank of Poland, $2 billion levering of hryvnia, which is the currency of the war state. Inflation in Ukraine would be probably about maybe 200%, maybe 1,000%. No one knows. That's impossible to predict for the war country, and we are trying to lever such a currency. That's no one ever tries such a possibility, and it will be, I believe, impossible even for the Federal Reserve, not mentioning National Bank of Poland, which is. Of course, if someone believes that that president of the National Bank of Poland is sitting in the cellar and with the printer and makes it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that anymore. That's a bank which produce money now, and commercial bank, of course, and investment banks as well. Not Polish, of course, but international. So inflation is absolutely not in the hand of the Polish government, but of course I have to admit that Polish government, if can only worse situation, of course do anything to worse it. Now predicted inflation for Poland is average for this year 12%, which is, in my opinion, already impossible to reach. That would be more than 15 for sure, with all this increase of prices. If our government, their government announced in the half of the year, what is probably very probable, that we cut off not only from Russian gas but also from Russian oil, which our economy depends as of the most in Europe, and our economy is in 97% oriented on imported oil. And well, American and Saudi and other oil, which is too expensive for us, but if we would like to replace Russian oil with that would be about 13% of our demand. So that's absolutely unbelievable tragedy, which waits for our industry, or industry in Poland, because it's not our. So well, situation for Poland, that would be quite similar to situation of to Ukrainian Nazis in Mariupol. That would be absolute destruction and execution of Polish economy. But the problem is that Nazis in Ukraine are really villains, and Polish economy is executed by Polish government and our dear Western allies.
Yes, I think that the economical situation everywhere in the West will be bad. But of course, especially in Poland, already I had a phone call from my son, who is now in Mazuria this afternoon, and he told me that people don't talk about Ukrainian war. People talk only about the prices. Because they cannot already now afford to pay basic needs. So what will be the situation in let's say 5 months? We have the impression that at the top of the Polish government we have people completely unconscious, or people who are ready to introduce a hardline dictatorship, because I don't really see any other situation. Of course, we have now something like, I would say, a soft dictatorship, but now the question is not a soft dictatorship. This question is a hardline dictatorship, because people will not be able to afford the economical situation. You have intellectuals, you have university people talking about Ukraine, about democracy, about liberty, and so on. But the basic part of a society is the working class or the unemployed, and these people, they don't talk about theory. They want to have a situation which is clear for them, economical situation. So the economy will make things very, very, very quickly very clear.
I'll read some comment from chat. It is striking how Biden quickly finds huge sums of money for weapons for the followers of Bandera, while his country, for example, does not have free medical care, and many young people have student loans. Millions of people collect food stamps and live in the containers.
Yeah, you have 40 million people in the United States who are living below the poverty level. That's the official statistic. I suppose that's more than that. But anyway, United States are becoming a third world country. I mean, when you see the city of tents, it's worse than a refugee camp in a lot of third world countries. In European Union now, we have 80 million people living lower than the poverty line already now. So what will be the situation when the gas and the oil will go up, and the food and all what is going after behind that? So the situation is absolutely catastrophic. Sometimes it looks like if media were dancing on the Titanic, but the situation is already very bad, and of course the Ukrainian war is giving more problems. but before the war, the situation was already catastrophic.
And what do you think about the housing bubble in Poland? The problem of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Poles who buy a house for the credit, and now because the how to say the rate of the credit is growing and they need pay more money, it will be there is a big danger that the Poles will have no money for continue the paying their debts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem with the rates is well, all this situation, as far as inflation concerned, especially, reminds me the 90s. Yeah, the politics of liberals, and especially, of course, personified by Leszek Balcerowicz, who is, as we could be sure, absolutely in favor, of course, of the present Ukrainian government. Because it was exactly the same. There was inflation which was absolutely artificially created by liberal politics. There was no reasons for hyperinflation in Poland, and for a whole decade, for whole the 90s, it was kept in more than 10% in the end of the decade, and much bigger, of course, in the beginning. And any attempt to increase movement of economy was absolutely suppressed by decisions of the National Bank of Poland, every time increasing the bank rates, and explaining that this is the way how to prevent inflation, which was absolutely opposite, yeah, in that time, because this inflation wasn't caused by over surplus of bank loans. It was absolutely opposite. That was not on that side of the economy. So now, when National Bank of Poland informed that it would be exactly the same movement, so we have collapse of the economy, we have increase of prices, and they would fight with inflation, which is caused from the outside, and the political reasons, with increasing rates. That is the only and absolutely sure way how to push Polish economy in stagflation. And that will be the first time because even in the 90s we will have first stagnation and stagflation, and then that will be real crisis. We have never in our lives felt that way. That would be absolutely uncomparable with anything, even in the darkest times of liberals and Balcerowicz. The bubble is sure that it has to be broken as any bubble in the market every time. That's the logic of capitalistic system. The contradictions of capitalism are absolutely constant. But well, that's the wider question, because I remember that it was one of the last interviews with Immanuel Wallerstein, yeah, and he said that, of course, he always believed, he was quite of optimist. Every Marxist is optimist, yeah. True Marxist optimist. Yeah? So Wallerstein believed that it's absolutely possible to have some element of transition to the more democratic, more participianist way of organizing global economy, more or less till the 2050, yeah, something like that. 2050, 2060. That was his forecast. But he was one very important exception for that. He said that would be absolutely impossible, and capitalism will invent something to transform in even more totalist, more oligarchist, or even fascist way, if get one of these chance. If it will be able to financialize climate change, it makes from that just another capitalist corpo idea. If that would be some worldwide pandemic, or if it would be world war. Yeah? And I believe that in maybe 3 years we can now see all these three. All these three methods, how global capitalism, global neoliberal capitalism can transform in some more oppressive and more aggressive and more fascist even form. And I'm afraid that it's not end anymore. That's the beginning. That's not the beginning of something like Georgia Gamban once described as state of exception. Yeah, that permanent state of exception, which is absolutely most favorite method of management of oligarchic neoliberal capitalism.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's unfortunately a very realistic way of looking at things. The logic of the system is going in that direction, and if we don't destroy the dominant system now, we will have that. We will have war. We will have some form of fascism. And we will have some police control and eventually new pandemics and so on, which will be a good pretext to organize this new dictatorship.
Okay, so my last question for both of you is concerning the history of the wars, because there was very often schema that after war there is a revolution. After the Prussian-French war, there was the Commune of the Paris. After the war with Japan or with Russia, there was a revolution October, and the Polish socialist state also was a baby of the Second World War. Do you think are you see something positive now in Poland, that this I don't know, war, economic crisis, did something change in Poland in the next years for better, for the Polish society starting to think about the changing, I don't know, social capitalist system?
I believe that we had really great revolutionaries among Polish people, but as a nation, we are not a great revolution makers. Yeah.
Right.
So we are the nation of Felix Dzierżyński. We are the nation of Rosa Luxemburg. We are the nation of Walerian Wróblewski, of Jarosław Dąbrowski. But we have to remember that all revolutionary changes in Poland were possible just because the war was won with someone's help. Yeah. And as you said, Michał, I am Polish patriot, and I'm proud that the Polish flag was hanging on Reichstag and Reichskanzlei together with Russian Soviet one, yeah, and that we were there on the final victory over fascism, and I always would like to repeat it in any other Nazi capital all over the world, whatever that would be, Mariupol, Lvov, or Washington. But well, the problem is that I'm old enough not to believe unconditionally in revolution, because I saw too much. But on the other hand, I'm not too old to forget that revolution is absolutely necessary. We need the revolution and we need to destroy global capitalism, because it's the only way. This is the only way. We can, of course, buy another year, another 10 years, another 50 years even. But 50 years may be too optimistic. 10 years, yeah, with some, better government, more social responsible, with some elements of social democratic strategy. Couple of years ago, especially before the pandemic, that was absolutely possible, yeah, to buy some years, to buy another decade, to wait till the new world order organized amongst equal actors like China, like BRICS, like these increasing economies, yeah, of the previous so-called third war, which now became first world. Yeah, at least. Yeah, but we don't have such time. We don't have another decade. We can see that capitalism is transforming just on our eyes, yeah, and transforming in without any pretense that it's democratic anymore, with cutting off all these promises of free speech, of freedom of media, and so on. Now all this, demo-liberal picture is not necessary anymore. Yeah, they don't need it anymore. They now can act direct. So we don't have time to wait for any small steps. Now is really time to remember that we were the nation of Felix Dzierżyński.
Yeah, I do agree. The situation in Poland is linked with the situation, of course, of all over the world, but especially in the region. And the problem now is that I don't really see any revolutionary movement, not only in Poland but in neighboring countries. The situation is that there is a lot of miscontent, but there is no political vanguard that can explain to people how it works and why their situation is so bad and where their situation will going worst. And as you say, Michał, revolution happened most often after wars. And not before wars. Of course, it would have been much more better if we had the revolution in 1914. But unfortunately, there was a first war and then the revolution. The problem now is that a world war now would be an atomic war. So I don't really see a revolution after an atomic war, but because there would be no more human being on Earth, and that's the basic problem. So humankind is in front of new problems, which it was not experienced earlier. And of course, if you are optimistic, you will answer that we will find a new way to get out of this trap in which we are. That's the optimistic answer. But of course, if you use the logic of history before us, we are going toward a world war because the capitalist system cannot survive without war now. And the local wars are not enough because system needs a militarized society, and a militarized society it's a society which is believing that we have a strong enemy, they try to invent this enemy with Russia, but I don't know if Russia is able to help all the peace-loving people in the Western world. Especially that the Russian government is not really a progressive government. It's not it's not the Lenin government anyway. We have also to take that into account. And China is very far from us. It can help, but it's very far from us. So the situation is not really optimistic. But I mean, we have to be conscious that we are in a very, very bad situation, and maybe if we are aware of that, we will be able to invent new tools. And in Poland, the problem of Poland historically is that Poland was always a country where people were quite well fed. And that's the reason why the Polish peasant, for example, comparing with Western Europe, didn't revolt against feudalism, because they were always thinking that if they flee the bad lord, they will find a new lord which will be a good guy. And that's the Polish tradition. The mass Polish tradition is to flee for another region, for another country, where you will have a good guy, a good lord, a good dobry pan. And that's why we have very good revolutionaries. But as a nation, it's difficult to organize revolution here and now. Even Rosa Luxemburg, she after all, she went to Germany because, she tried what she could in Poland, and later she finished in Germany because the opportunity for a revolution was appearing much more realistic in Berlin than in Warsaw. Even if we had the 1905 revolution, which is one of the best traditions of Poland. The problem was that it was the first revolution, and the second revolution happened in 1917, but Poland was then under German occupation, and it couldn't participate in the second phase of the revolution.
Well, the last question. If do you want to make some comment to this woman which is here, because it is very actually for two reasons. Firstly, or three reasons. First reason, we have the anniversary of the bombing of Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Second reason, it is she died a few days ago. And she is one of the famous person in the sanction question. And what is sanction? Because I think that the Polish society they really don't understand what sanction is about. Do you somebody of you want to comment about?
No. First, I will humoristically say that I was not believing that something like witch exists. But when you discover somebody like Madeleine Albright, then you believe that witches are existing. Even if you are supposed to be scientific Marxist, whatever you want, but she is really a witch. If you remember what she was telling about Iraqi children, and the fact that the price was worth it to have 500,000 of children who died. But apart from this, let's say, black humoristic aspect, I think that the sanctions are it's funny because it's strange. Let's say the sanctions are against a lot of countries, but now you have too many countries in the world where are under sanction, because you have Russia, you have Belarus, you have North Korea, you have Cuba, you have Iran, you have Syria, and so on and so on and so on. So in a certain sense, sanctions are good because they push a lot of countries to cooperate between themselves. And when now we have the de-dollarization, which is arriving. I mean, even Saudi Arabia. I mean, Saudi Arabia is not for me at all an example. But when Saudi Arabia decide that they will make a trade with China in yuan and not in dollar anymore, it means that the ship is sinking. Because even the Saudi king doesn't believe anymore in his protector. So all these sanction policies created so many enemy of the system all over the world that it opens new winds and new trends. And I think that it's rather a positive thing. And concerning Russia, the sanction of 2014 helped Russia objectively to have a better economy. So I hope that it will be the same for current sanction.
Yeah, well, short comments. Considering Madeleine Albright's death, I would say that is just a drop in the sea. Yeah, that's first to go.
Yeah.
But her known citations about this, the sacrifices which was worth to act against Iraq. Well, the saddest thing is that Joe Biden repeats that, because he said more or less exactly the same, that the sacrifices of sanctions globally absolutely war acting. Yeah, so um, he would like to do the same like this witch. And about sanctions, yeah, I saw well, of course, apart from living under sanctions in times of Reaganomics, yeah, in Poland, where Poland was economically attacked by the Western bloc. And we survived only as a part of the Eastern cooperation within Soviet alliance. I observed sanctions just couple months ago, where I was another time in Iran. Iran is under sanctions from more than 40 years, and well, of course, it's hard to live. It's hard for people, yeah, especially when in countries like Iran, with old elements of old society, so elements of own oligarchic relationships internally. Yeah? So of course it's not easy for them. But on the other side, it's something I always repeat, because it's what Antonio Negri once written, that he never ever seen people living so freely, absolutely, like in Iran. Yeah, he's absolutely, of course, not in favor of Islamic revolution in Iran as a communist, but he said that that's what I observed with my eyes, that society totally blocked, cut off from the Western and outside influences, can be absolutely free inside. Yeah, can feel free, can feel free to express their views. There's the only country, I believe, which now is really democratic, apart maybe from Cuba and North Korea. Yeah. So only countries which are totally cut off from the world state, global world state, are free. Yeah, and the societies within these countries, like Northern Korea or Iran, are free. So I am strongly in support of such decisions of President Biden and his sponsors. Just cut off whole the world and leave us alone, and we will work together to make world better without you, oligarchs.
Right.
Okay, it was good word for finish our conversation. Thank you both of you. That for this, I think that it is very important in this day that there existed the voice independent, that this oligarchic corporation and government propaganda. So thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, the pleasure was for us.